Hey everybody, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Teri Hunter. I'm an intuitive astrologer and I'm here today to talk about the babies that were born in October of 2025. Right now it's May 2026 and I have been inspired by Spirit to talk about the children that are born in 2024, 2025, and 2026, as these children will be birthing literally a new earth. They will birth new structures, they will birth new ways of interacting, and they will be aware of themselves on a soul level that will be unprecedented. I can't even say in how long it might have been when mankind was actually aware that there was more to themselves than just the physical apparatus with which they're inhabiting. So, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk about the outer planets, which represent generational dynamics. We're talking about Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Uranus takes 84 years to go around the zodiac and spends about 7 to 8 years in each sign, and it has moved into Gemini in 2025, where it will tip its toe before retrograding back into Taurus, which is significant because those last degrees of Taurus are called, they're pressure points of change and opportunity. We will look at Neptune as Neptune takes 144 years to go around the zodiac, spending about 14 years in each sign. And maybe it's about 145 years, depending on retrogrades. And it has not been in Aries since about 1861, the United States Civil War. We also have Pluto, which takes 284 years. I always mix this up. 48 years, 284 years, regardless, to move around the zodiac. And it has not been in Aquarius since the Revolutionary War. So we are looking at planets that have moved into air and earth. I'm sorry, air and fire. And so things are going to feel very accelerated. There's going to be almost like the air element is stoking the fire, the passion that the fire represents. And these children will come with that burning yearning in their bellies. The inner planets, or what we call the personal planets, the sun, the moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, they are these are more, we would have to look at your child's chart and know the time of birth to really be specific to them. But in general, they represent character traits. The sun representing the I am, the identity, the ego. The moon representing my emotional body and how I feel about things. Mercury representing my mind and how I think and how I communicate and how I learn. Venus representing my skills, my self-confidence, and how I partner and how I belong in the world. Mars represents my action, my assertiveness, and also in some ways my aggressive tendencies, how I use my physical body. We will also look at Jupiter and Saturn, which are semi-personal planets. Jupiter is currently in Cancer, where it is exalted at the time of October 2025. This is a significantly beneficial aspect to have in your natal chart. So this is very favorable for your kids. And then we have Saturn conjunct Neptune in Pisces, Aries during 2025. And that is a conjunction that has not happened in thousands of years. So the children born with this in their birth chart, think of the birth chart sort of as a stamp, okay, as an intention, as a map of how I'm going to try to get where I want to go in life and experience what I want to experience. So they're picking aspects that are just un I want to use the word unprecedented, but how many times can I say that? It's like they're climbing up a hill and they know there's a vista up there that nobody has seen, and it's so beautiful they're willing to strive for that. We also have the nodes. The nodes are attached to the moon. They represent karmic points. The south node representing sort of a default something we're so used to that we do it unconsciously. We have unconscious beliefs, unconscious ways of behaving and thinking, and that is in Virgo right now. Then we have the North Node, which is in Pisces, the North Node representing an experience our soul is yet to really achieve. It's more of a dream, and it's something we're ravenous, something we're really, we have almost this angst about wanting to experience that. And I believe that this access where these children are born is really to release that worry and that earthly mental loop that distracts us from the goal of our divinity. And the idea that that North Node in Pisces is compelling me to allow my creativity to burst forth. Pisces rules music and lyrics and poetry and dance, and film and photography and creating things that are magical. Think of movies like Avatar or, ballet, anything that excites the soul and evokes passion and creativity and a sense of oneness. So these children are born on this access, which is going to compel them through their lifetimes to cut through the muck. They also will be born with Chiron in Aries at the later degrees of Aries, which is a master class. When you're getting into the late 20s, any of the 20 degrees, but the later the degree, the more intense the experience, because we are in a familiar area and yet we still have not anchored in the dynamics. So when we're looking at Chiron in Aries, there is a chronic wound of the self. And the wound of the self is actually the gift, because it is what brings about the passion to continue to burn the fire of my wants and my desires. And now it's about understanding that all the bumps, all the challenges, all the nooks and crannies are part of the tapestry that creates a strong and sustainable new identity and new sense of self. So let me pull up the chart, and we're going to pop through a few days throughout the month and take a look at it. Again, this is a very general dynamic, but it can give you a lot of information, as you will be one who helps guide and support these children and be the one that sets the template in this earthly experience for them to give themselves permissions to be challenged, to potentially fail. But is failure actually an action, or is it an attitude? So let's start off the month with Venus. Venus rules my sense of confidence, my skills, my voice, my willingness to speak my opinion, not just my speaking voice. And she is conjunct the South Node in Virgo. So this would be, a habit of maybe identifying my self-worth with how I am of service to others, how I could be almost self-deprecating in that service. There could be a real indication of an imbalance of self-care, because I'm so attached to identifying myself with others. The rising sign, so this right now at the time that I'm doing this at 12 o'clock on the 1st of October, the rising sign was Sagittarius. This will change all over the place. So we would need to know your child's specific time of birth in order to know what their map looks like. We also would need to know the time of birth to know the moon. The moon, again, being the emotional body and how they feel about things. So these are two very important points that I will not be addressing in these videos because they're too specific to the individual. But I do think that this dynamic between Venus and the South Node will be sort of you having an awareness that your child could be very self-critical, could very well be afraid of taking actions through their heart, through their faith. They're wanting to see a practical road ahead, and being nurtured into a space where it's safe to dream will be very beneficial for them. We also see that at the time of their birth, the outer planets, I'm going to click on Neptune here. Neptune is retrograde. That's indicated by the red number. Uranus is retrograde and Pluto is retrograde. So they are coming in when the Earth is in a time of reflection about Uranus is awakening, okay? It's at 1 degree of Gemini at this time, which is really important because it has not been here for 84 years. And so we're really looking at, how do I think? Am I talking, speaking, learning about what I want for the vision of the future and for mankind? This is very much, with Uranus in Gemini, it's very much a focus on the people and benefit for the people. A sextile is a favorable aspect that needs activation. It needs consciousness infused into it. And I believe this consciousness is attached to Neptune and my spirituality, my creativity, and the idea that I'm birthing a whole new me from my soul through the physical versus the physical, and maybe there's a soul there. This is further supported by the sextile to Pluto, which is an understanding of the human psychology and how fear and how money and how sex and how structures have a power over us. And many times, especially in these coming ages, we'll look at how the internet has power over us and the opinions of people or dynamics on the internet. Within this, I'm not going to discuss the moon again because that's too personal to your child and moves too quickly. But we also see Saturn here in this configuration. And Saturn rules history of mankind. It rules authority, government, structures. It rules limitations and responsibilities and obligations and duties. But when those dynamics are put in play towards the things that come from our heart, when we're willing to endure a faith in ourselves beyond what I see outside, Saturn will reward. But Saturn does not give those rewards easily. There is a journey, and that journey will be one of belief and of belief of the creativity of the soul, that can create and co-create whatever it wants as it connects to the laws of the universe. Literally, that's what that means to me. Okay. Jupiter is making on this very first day of the month, and it is in play throughout this the beginning of October. Jupiter is in a square to Mercury. Mercury is in Libra, which makes this is actually a very beautiful energy, very sweet person, someone who would speak very nicely, always think in cooperative terms. But the square to Jupiter to me, almost feels like it's thwarting my expansion. If we teach our children to, be nice to everyone, that it's bad to think, that's maybe not the best example. There's something about Jupiter here in Cancer that will have a family dynamic, and how we think or what we believe, or even potentially our religious beliefs or our educational beliefs, can be in conflict with the expansiveness of Mercury wanting to be cooperative in many ways. There could be a push-pull here. And we also see that further evidenced by the Chiron energy in square as well. So this child could inadvertently have, well, and they could also have a sibling that is a little bit challenging for their individuality. So if your child is born in this time frame, you'll see it, we move on, it loosens up a little bit as we get further into the month. But we want to be mindful that we create an environment where the child can feel safe expressing the individual, as well as its desire to be cooperative, but not so cooperative that it loses its individual expression. You meet those people. I don't want to confront that situation. I don't want to argue with that person. This would be kind of one of those situations, and you teach them that it's not an argument, it's a constructive way of expressing yourself, and that they have every right to do so in a constructive way. I mean, that's the best example I could use. Again, I would have to see the personal chart to be able to be more specific about that. But overall, having Mercury in Libra and having Jupiter in Cancer is favorable. It is harmonious while stressful in this particular configuration, because the self and the individuality and the importance of that individuality gets to be made a priority. That could be part of the problem, that that this particular child with Venus in Virgo being of service, having the square to potentially my siblings as well. Mercury rules siblings. We could, especially if this is your eldest child, having them be too much of service to the family dynamic without having the balancing time of taking care of themselves and what they want to endeavor. Let's go to the 12th, the middle of the month. About the middle of the month. And we see an opposition between Venus and Saturn. And this is the late degrees, the 20 degrees, and between 20 and 29. And the later we get, these are stressing degrees. There are degrees where we're in a sign and we're mastering the energies of that sign through our awarenesses, through knowing that we cannot escape challenges, we cannot escape oppositions or squares in our lives, but we can work with them through an awareness that mutes the experience. So here, Venus in Virgo is very much coming up on a point in Libra where she's about to move into her rulership. And she is learning that she is source energy. And this can be very challenging because when you learn that you're a co-creator in life, and you first realize you co-create that bully across the street or that nasty kid on the play yard, you may not like that, but if you can see that that co-creation gives you benefit, it gives you an opportunity to come from the divine, to look down the road to see if that friendship or that dynamic is sustainable to you. Libra or Venus rules partnerships and female friendships. And if your child has Venus in Virgo, they could always be friends, be of service to their friends. The one who always drives, the one that always has the nice lunch, the one that always gives but doesn't always receive. Sometimes in prehistoric times. But when I grew up, there were cliques. There's movies called Mean Girls. This is the type of child who could, in their youth, inadvertently be of service to the mean girls. And we want to make sure that they don't do that. Because when I look at the trines to Pluto and to Uranus, it's like being liberated from the group. Uranus, I'm sorry, Aquarius, which is ruled by Uranus, is all about like big systems, the internet. So we might even be careful of the kind of groups they're on the internet, and that they are finding their own individuality, that their service is not to acquiesce to the needs of others, but to represent their own soul's desires, and the path, and following that path is their service to others. This will be a revelation, I think, coming up. We will see starting today on the 12th, but moving a little bit forward all the way through the 20th, I believe, we're going to see Mercury and Mars come into a conjunction. Now we see the Libras that take no prisoners. Now we see the Libras who really want to be the softer side of Libra, but they may not be. Mars is in rulership in Scorpio, and Mercury in Scorpio it's a couple things. First of all, it can feel the psychology under a situation like nobody's business. Like you can't really, when someone has strong scorpionic energy, and when your mind thinks like a Scorpio, even if your sun is in Libra, you will see people trying to manipulate you. You could potentially know how to be a manipulator yourself because you know what to say to make people do what you want them to do. I don't necessarily think that's true because Venus in Virgo is in too much of an opposition to Saturn. So I tend to think this is more of an energy of a people pleaser. And we might want to be careful of that. We don't want them to to be so much of a people pleaser that they get lost in the mix. So, and this is this influence of Mercury and Mars. This also, they could war with words. So when they could hold it in, hold it in, hold it in, and then again, it would depend on where their moon is, how they emote, and what the rising sign is. This would make a really big difference in the chart. But as a generalization, this here we have it exact on the 20th. So pretty much for the rest, for the second half of October, you're going to see this energy of Mercury and Mars together. And frankly, when we get into the Scorpio energy, to have the Sun, Mars, and Mercury, that is a powerhouse person who will be very intense, very intense. And that makes even more important the rising sign and the moon, because that will give clues onto how to balance that energy. This is a fixed sign. So these children, their childhood, the imprint that is laid upon them in those early years, 0 to 5, and then especially, I think, 5 to say 15, 16, when they're shaping their idea of adulthood, are super powerful. We also see we've still got Jupiter in Cancer, and this is always going to be supportive. It is starting in opposition with Pluto, but at this point, it's not extremely intense. We will see that Jupiter is going to retrograde back through Capricorn. I think that happens a little later this month. I'm sorry, did I just say Capricorn? I meant to say Cancer. And whenever a planet retrogrades, there's a review, a time to rest, and a time to reevaluate. And I say this because I think it's important. This is a planet of faith and expansion and of wealth and of diversity and new ideas, integration of ideas. And it's kind of a dreamy planet in its potentials, because it can braid so many philosophies together that it can create a utopia. And I think that this is a supporting aspect to Mercury and Mars. And as they move further into the Scorpio energy, this becomes a more favorable aspect. So as this child is shaped to use what they know on an intuitive level, this is going to make a child extremely intuitive, then they can use it for the higher vibrations versus the more challenging vibrations. Okay. Uranus has gone retrograde and is now at the 0 degree of Gemini. And the reason that this is significant is because any planet that is at the 0 degree, there is a element of needing to put a cloak of protection around that planet's energy so that toxic energies, toxic people, toxic thoughts, things that are erosive, things that feed fear, things that feed disempowerment, there's a need to be aware of those things and to filter them. We don't want to exterminate them altogether, but we don't want to gloss over them too much, because these children are awakening a new mind. And the old mind may very much want to buck up against it. And it may be, again, part of how technology has expanded and some of the groups that they interact with on the internet. Not everything is going to be related to how they're being brought up in the home. It's also going to be how they're brought up in the school system, if there is one, or how they're interacting on the internet as a community. We also see a trine to the North Node. Let me click on this, between Mars and Mercury. So as they implement their creativity, their sense of connection to the divine, I literally think that I can imagine these little ones growing up with playtime, meditation time, meet your guides through crayon arts and crafts time, in creative endeavors, being very into music. All of these things will very much help these children align to the powerful intuitive energy that this Mars Mercury and conjunction and energy offers them, as a powerhouse of thinking, brave thinking. But in contained and trying to, you can't lie to a kid like this. That's all I have to tell you. Don't try to do that because they'll see right through it. Okay. Venus on the 14th moved into Libra in her exaltation, so that should be noted because she's very strong here and she's very attractive here. She's a very she's a people magnet here. We have, if your child is born on somewhere around the 21st on the new moon in Libra, this was very powerful. I'm going to change actually the time when I was doing my research for the video. I was kind of surprised to see a yod on this new moon. Now, a yod is what they call the finger of God. So it is the soul's intention for a focal point. The legs on the yod represent supportive dynamics, but they're not something like supportive, like, well, here's that glass of water that's, well, it's actually lemon water that's going to keep me hydrated. I will have to have an inner knowing of that water is there for me. The yod is focused in on this new beginning in Libra. And not only is it a new beginning, it's a new beginning at an anaretic degree. It is in a relationship with Uranus in retrograde. We just talked about Uranus, a need to protect my thoughts, my speech, the type of people I interact with, the kind of media that comes at me from that which does not support the future or my personal genius. We also see this being supported by Neptune. Saturn is not really in play here because a yod has to be within 1 to 2 degrees, and Saturn is further out of orb. So here's Neptune on the 0 degree on the world axis of creating a whole new human being. And this time, this new moon is also conjunct the fixed star Spica, which is the voice of angels. But we don't have that on this chart, but this is creating new peace, new harmony, and new balance that is about a give and take versus the inadvertent. The Libra energy is overly cooperative. It acquiesces the self in order to keep the peace. This would indicate an inner knowing that to truly keep the peace, I'm part of the equation. And that's why we do see a bit of an opposition to this individual energy of Chiron, the wound of self. But the yod is just Uranus, Neptune. So this is a generation at this time gets to start a new beginning under the darkness of a new moon, built on a faith, on an inner knowing, on a voice that says, that is what a lot of this disruption has been about, is the dismantling of old antiquated systems that then give birth to new systems. And the square to the new moon from Pluto would represent that underbelly. Pluto's now moving forward and won't be at this degree or these early degrees of Aquarius again for 200 plus years. And then there is Jupiter here at the later degrees of its exaltation, meaning the potential of what might, I didn't mention this in previous videos, but the Cancer energy rules your country. It rules the roots from which you were raised. So it's not just the home environment, like I live at 123 ABC Street. It's also the city, but more the country and the country dynamics. So there may be a bit of push-pull, but this focal point on the new beginning is a divine point and very powerful. Okay, so this, and let me click off the moon. We still see the conjunction here between Mars and Mercury at this time as well. So I think this is, again, a very intuitive potential child. This could be someone who could actually talk to the dead. And then let me go to the 28th, to the end of the month. And we see now that Neptune has moved back into its rulership of Pisces. Now, Neptune is going to remain at 29 degrees retrograde. It will not go further back into the Pisces energy. This is significant because this is a stressor. It's reviewing and revisiting something where either I have been invisible, I'm not recognizing the self, I'm feeling overly empathetic and compassionate to stories that I know are ones that are out of balance. The challenge with the Pisces energy is there's a lot of addiction and escapism and illusion, and therefore deception. And this could potentially be self-deception because there is a trine at this very powerful retrograde degree to Mercury and how I think and how I communicate and how I allow my intuition to speak louder to me. That is a really powerful dynamic. And as Mercury is about to move into its detriment, where this degree is compelling me and inspiring me to trust that deeper inner knowing of how other people's minds work. And if this is your child, they could be very aware of how your mind works. And there is a bit of a challenge because this Mercury is in an opposition to retrograde Uranus. And again, there's that 0 degree of having to sort of protect. And when I say protect, I mean it in a way where the protection comes from consciousness and awareness, not from literally, putting a bubble of protection around your child. When you have a consciousness of something that feels off or feels uncomfortable, stopping and saying, why is it? Why is that? Why do I feel this way? And again, these children are going to be predisposed to trusting their soul's voice and potentially being able to hear their guides and their connections to that which cannot be seen. Very much indicated by Neptune here. So in that potential ability, you get to help manage them as they move through two worlds. So I think this is super important. And as the final thing I want to say is that as Saturn has moved a little bit deeper into its retrograde in Pisces, it is making a favorable aspect to Jupiter and to Mars and Mercury. So this again is a very much a signature for me of a child who potentially can traverse multiple dimensions of thought, of awareness of the psychology of what lives beneath the mask, beneath the mask, and your willingness to allow the mask to be lifted, even if the mask, like they come home and they're like, my teacher, da 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 da, and instead of like the olden days, well, you have to listen to your teacher, they're your boss. You have a more discerning ear and are willing to investigate their concepts, their thoughts. This will be so powerful for you. Oh, and I want to say too, I didn't mention this, but the sun has moved into Scorpio. So you've got a stellium in Scorpio starting on the 22nd of the sun, Mars, and Mercury. I kind of intimated that was going to happen, but I didn't quite dig into it. When you have a configuration of those three planets in Scorpio, you have a very intense and powerful child. Now, this is favorable with the grand trines we see, these aspects to Jupiter and to Neptune, even Saturn here. So this is working in favor, but at the same time, this is a powerhouse child that is here to individualize themselves, to play within the yard, but to be a boss of themselves on the schoolyard. I don't know if that was a very good analogy, but it kind of felt like it worked for me. All right, let me stop the share here. Again, if you have a child that's born in October, they're traversing the Libra and Scorpio energy. And in 2025, these children were born with a very strong mission of what they want to experience and what the legacy they will leave behind. They are architects of a new human, not just a new world. If you'd like to have your child's chart looked at, or you'd like to have your chart looked at, or you'd like to see how the two of you interact, I'm here for you. My information is below underneath the description. And please like, please subscribe, and please share. Thank you so much. I'll see you soon.